So Anthropic shipped a new Claude model yesterday and also closed a $65 billion round on the same afternoon. The model now catches its own mistakes far more often and stops handing you shaky work dressed up as finished work. Now here's our analysis of Claude Opus 4.8 on the lens of a marketing team. Quick question before we go deep. Anthropic is now the most valuable AI company on the board. The model is about 4 times less likely to let its own flaws slide. It can run hundreds of agents in one session, and you can now dial how hard it thinks per task, with the fast tier running roughly 3 times cheaper. So let's get through it. The same afternoon Opus 4.8 was released, Anthropic closed a $65 billion round at a valuation near $965 billion. That is the largest any AI company has raised. It pushes Anthropic past OpenAI within the reach of $1 trillion. With an IPA now very much in the view. For a marketer, however, the takeaway is simple. The platform you wire into your content pipeline is now the most valuable AI company on the board, with cash to outlast your next several planning cycles. Pricing held flat through this release at $5 per million input tokens and 25 per million output. Whether it stays flat once the IPO clock is ticking is the open question. Now, the number to read first. Anthropic says Opus 8.4 is around 4 times less likely than 4.7 to let flaws in its own work pass without comment. On screen is their own misaligned behavior score, where lower is better. You can see here that 4.8 is close to the unreleased Mythos preview. Here's why that beats the coding score for a marketer, right? The thing that kept AI out of serious content work was never speed. It was the fact that AI was confidently wrong. A clean paragraph, a stat nobody sourced, and it surfaces week later when someone quotes your own blog back and the figure is off. So you learn to babysit it. Read the draft twice, trace every number before it ships, and so on. But here, a model that tells you it's not sure about a figure is worth more to the workflow than the one that drafts faster. The benchmark moved the way you'd expect. On screen is Opus 4.8 against 4.7 and the current frontier from OpenAI and Google. Every category Anthropic published went over 4.7, and that is somewhat expected, is what I'd say. One hedge fund testing told Anthropic the biggest difference was the model proactively flagging issues with the inputs and outputs of an analysis. Next, the feature with the biggest sale. Inside Claude Code, Anthropic's terminal tool, the model can plan a job and run hundreds of agents in parallel within one session. The example that Anthropic themselves showed was a code migration across hundreds of thousands of lines, kickoff to merge completely. Think about a marketing job that you keep pushing to the next quarter. The site-wide audit or a few hundred product pages with meta descriptions nobody has touched. None of that was ever hard. It was just too big to handle. And even within a single chat window, it used to take time. So it just sat on some task list. Now you can run a few hundred of those passes at once. Now, on to the change most teams will feel in the invoice. How hard Opus 4.8 works on a request, from standard for routine drafting up to max for the analysis you can't get wrong. The setting sits right next to the model picker, so you choose it per task. And the fast tier now runs about 2.5 times faster and roughly 3 times cheaper than it did on earlier models. So if you want to act on Opus 4 instead of just reading about it, here's where we'd start. First, put the fact check inside the draft. The honesty gain means a verification pass can run while the piece is still being written, not after. Second, pick one library-wide job you've been avoiding. Hand it to a single dynamic workflow session instead of a quarter of someone's calendar. Third, set effort by what a wrong answer called. Standard speed for bulk grind, max for the analysis going in front of a board. And fourth, finally, recost your AI line items. Fast mode running roughly 3 times cheaper means work that wasn't worth the spend last month might clear it now. So that's Opus 4.8 for a marketing team. You can trust more of what comes out of it without watching every token go by. We've covered this in much more depth in our articles and we'll link in the comments. Thanks for watching.